Please remember that nothing we say here should be taken as personal advice. The conversation is for entertainment purposes only. If you have questions about your financial situation, please talk to a licensed financial advisor. All right, welcome to another episode of Future Money, where we talk about the investments of the future.
Where we make you money.
All right, episode 19.
Yeah, let's go. I miss you, bro.
Yeah, man, it's been a while, right?
Yeah.
I think you did the last one without me because I I wasn't available. So thanks for holding down the fort.
Of course, it wasn't the same for sure. I had a great conversation with the ex-ambassador to Germany, John Emerson. It was fantastic.
Yeah.
Check it out.
Yeah, heard it was really good. I mean, it was really good. I heard it.
Yeah, the guy really unleashed. You know, he was no holds barred conversation. It was awesome.
Yeah. Well, we spent the last two talking about basically, banking and politics. So, in an effort to not bore the crap out of you this time, no, I'm just kidding. Those were amazing. But in an effort to make a more exciting topic, we're going to talk about the thing that everybody's talking about.
Yeah. First of all, it's AI. Right. But also let's talk about GK. I think this podcast is really about our firm and it goes to a lot of our clients. We had a 13-year anniversary last week.
Yes.
Right.
As I like to say, the GK bar mitzvah.
That's right. It's a bar mitzvah.
GK is now becoming a man or a woman.
Yeah. No, it's nice to see this firm grow to almost 50 employees, and we've been all along for this road. I remember when we started, our first party was a pizza at Ross's house.
Yeah. And then we had our first anniversary was like at a bowling alley or something.
Yeah. But it's nice, so thank you to all the clients, all the people that really trusted us and stayed the course with us.
Yeah.
We had some luck, with some skill,
That's the way it always is. You gotta have both.
Yeah, both, but it's been a fantastic journey. So, and I think we're laboring the next phase, GK 3.0, because we've gone through a couple phases now. And I think our next road is get to 5 billion and really kind of increase our breadth and our, really like access to more things and being able to really do a lot more and obviously grow the GK family to more than the 7,000 people plus that we work with today.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we have a lot of cool stuff that we've been working on that's going to be unleashed. So it's really, if you're not part of the family, you have to be. And if you're part of the family, thank you for your trust and look forward to more amazing stuff.
Yeah, and I think for the people who have been with us for a long time can kind of understand, right? Last year was a really challenging year.
Yep.
This year has been a great year to start so far.
Finally making money.
Yeah. I was saying, that's where we make your money again. But the people who have been with us for a long time, have seen the fruits of their labor. So, if we could say one thing, it's stay the course, focus on the vision, focus on the long term, because we do a lot of work for our clients and it will work out over time. We just got to give it time.
Well, lots of lessons this year, right? Despite all the anxiety and despite like all the recession and debt ceiling and like all the BS noise that we've seen all year long, markets are up double digits no matter where you look. We have accounts that are up 15-20% this year. And
everyone was so scared of tech. Everyone's calling to put money in treasury bonds, money in the money market. Right. Meanwhile, tech has had an epic rally in the last 6 months, 7 months. So again, it stresses the importance of, just staying the course, working with an advisor to help you manage emotions, which is, part of the biggest part a lot of times is just keeping you in the game.
Yeah.
And when you do have convictions in stocks that are great companies and they're down big, that's when you have to have even more conviction.
Right.
And I think that's one of the things we're going to be talking about today when we talk about AI. We're going to talk about some of those companies that that we did have a lot of conviction in last year when things were going very poorly. Yeah. And a lot of that has paid off.
And honestly, that's one of our biggest jobs is really to keep people in the game.
Yep.
I think at the end of the day, that's really it. Nobody can predict short-term movements, but we know long-term, if you stay in the game, you're gonna do well.
Yeah.
Right?
Who would have thought if you asked somebody on January 1st how much the NASDAQ would be up today? No, I maybe out of 1,000, maybe one person would have said where we are today.
Totally.
So don't try to do it, but just stick to good investments and good advice. That's all we can say.
It's okay to be humble, by the way. You know? It's humility is part of the game. You know, I think the stock market will make you humble every day. You challenge your convictions, but it's okay to understand that aspect of investing. You know.
Yeah.
So with that being said,
let's talk about Hatem's favorite topic on the planet.
It is,
and I've officially changed Hatem's middle name to AI, so he is now Hatem AI Diab.
Yep.
But
I am here in the flesh.
This is actually he's a deep fake. This is not really him.
Yeah. What an interesting time, right? Like what's going on? Like ChatGPT has just changed the world,
blown the doors off it. You know, we've been hearing the word AI for so long now. And I do think the advent of ChatGPT really at the end of last year, fastest to 100 million users in a history of any product.
Think about that. I think they got to 100 million
in like a month.
In a month. Insane, right?
Yeah.
What, it took Netflix, I don't know, 5 years to get there?
Yeah, it took Facebook like several years. And so it is impressive, and it has changed, and it's opened the door to a lot of different things. Now Google wasn't on board. Now they are on board.
So it's fair to say probably everyone that's listening to this has probably used ChatGPT at this point. It's basically what we call a killer app, right? AI existed for a long time. We just didn't see it at work. ChatGPT has shown us how useful AI could be for everything that we do on a daily basis.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, I've introduced it to a few people who, if you're in the investment world, you obviously know AI. If you are investing, you know AI. But if you're, somebody who hasn't had exposure to this, maybe you don't know. So my sister-in-law, even my son, I was like, do you want to see how this thing works? How AI works?
Do you want someone else to do your homework?
He was like, he loves video games, because he's 8 and he loves the game Zelda. And I was like, ChatGPT, write us a song about Zelda.
Oh, that's amazing.
And he wrote like a 3-verse song for him, and he was blown away. Or my sister-in-law, who's in grad school, like I showed it to her, and she's like, oh my God, like just life-changing. Yeah. So before we talk about AI, artificial intelligence, I think we want to there's a few terms that are kind of thrown around that sometimes people use in the same, in the same type of thing, but they're not exactly the same. So, right. So let's define a few of them. The first one is artificial intelligence. What is it exactly?
It's basically development of computer systems that are able to perform tasks that normally require human skills. Right. So just things that we do as humans now can have computers that do it. Right.
Yeah.
Generative AI, which is basically what ChatGPT is.
Right.
It's a type of system that's capable of generating text, images, or any other media that in response to a prompt. So you can actually tell it what to do, and it generates either a text or media or poem or song and so forth.
Right.
Machine learning. What is that?
So, machine learning, this is kind of where people started getting confused. Like I honestly remember meeting with executives from machine learning and AI 5 years ago. Yeah. And I could not tell the difference between what was one or the other. All right. But it's the development of computer systems that can learn and basically use algorithms and statistics to create, patterns. They create patterns in data. So the machines basically learn what's going on. And, I like to use, we're going to talk about stock in Nvidia, and we've talked about it in the past, but one of the things that I remember more than anything, there's only a few companies that I remember the exact moment we bought them, and Nvidia is one of them. And it was the way Jensen Huang, who's the CEO, talked about. Hang on, the way he talked about machine learning, and AI specifically, and how he talked about it was really kind of what opened the door, opened our eyes to this stuff well ahead of when most people were even talking about it. So machine learning was kind of that first step, I think, before the AI process really got started. Yeah.
And you can kind of go even deeper to this, and you said deep learning, which is basically the subset of machine learning on neural networks.
Oh, neural networks. That's a fancy one.
Fancy one. Neural networks. We're basically, think of it as just a brain, right? Like just how our brain works. Computers now are working out just like brains, where they process different languages and different things together, and able to really kind of create some bigger inferences or some bigger ways of learning about different things, right? So really you're allowing what a brain does, but a multiple of 100 or 1,000 or millions, really. So
wait till we get into quantum computing.
Yeah, well, that's another thing, right?
For another day.
And lastly, predictive AIs, right, was basically use of data and statistical algorithm machine learning techniques to identify the likelihood of future outcomes based on historical data, right? So
you'll get this a lot when you type in your Google, your Gmail or your Outlook. You're like, thank you, and I look forward to speaking to you. It will suggest.
What's funny is that's exactly what ChatGPT is, right? It just predicts the likelihood of the next word being what, right? Like sometimes you ask something, like, holy shit, this is really, I don't know, groundbreaking. But all it's doing is figuring out, okay, if I put this word, this is the likelihood of using this next word is, right?
Yeah.
So it's not really sentient. It doesn't really know what it's writing, It just
well, we'll get to that in a minute, because everyone's pounding the table on AI, being the human killer.
Yep.
We'll get to that in a minute.
Yeah. So I'll say we're not expert in this stuff, but we try to be dangerous. We try to understand this stuff because it's really important for investments, for our prospects.
I should say we're not experts if you compare us to an engineer who focuses on this stuff.
Right.
We're generally, from an investment standpoint, I feel like we've been investors in this for a long time.
Right.
We've been thinking about this for a long time, and part of future money, part of our investment process as a company is thinking about what the future is,
right?
And not the future 50 years from now, because that doesn't help us with investments, right? But we've been talking
1
about
to 5,
AI. 1 to 5 years. Yeah. Who are the players? How does it, how does it end up as a real investment thesis, like Virgin Galactic, SPACs in 2021, and say, eventually in 30 years, maybe somebody will possibly maybe go to space on a shuttle for fun.
Yeah.
That's not a real investment thesis.
Yeah, and I think, again, I said the word killer app. It's something that we use a lot in tech. Is one application that really kind of unleashes the technology. Think of, Facebook for social media or Netflix for streaming. These apps came in and they really kind of created the space.
Next iteration of computing,
correct,
the next iteration of whatever it is,
Yeah. AI and generative AI in the sense are really kind of, or ChatGPT in this side of the killer app for AI, because now we can touch it, we can see it, we can see how it's going to be impactful for every business. And I think if you look at, we just got through earnings season, every CEO had to somehow say that they have AI.
If you didn't say AI, your stock didn't go up. If you said AI, your stock went up a lot.
Correct. So the implication of this are going to be insane. And frankly, I will put this in the show notes. There is a podcast with Jensen Huang, who is the CEO of Nvidia, that really talks about the implication of this new technology in all the industry, right? And I think anybody who's interested in this space should really listen to that keynote.
Honestly, Jensen Huang is one of the most impressive humans, but definitely CEOs. The way he talks about this stuff, he's so passionate about it and he nerds out about it, which I like, but not in a crazy way that we can't understand it. And everything he talks about is amazing. And he does talk about this as being the iPhone moment, right?
It really is.
And it's funny because people say the iPhone moment has now come to mean so many different, like every time a technology sort of shifts, everyone calls it the iPhone moment now. So nod to Apple and everything they've done, obviously, where every major event in tech now is called the iPhone moment.
I mean, because it's easy to understand what that means, right? Like the iPhone changed, without the iPhone, we would not have Uber, right? Without the iPhone, we would not have Grubhub.
And that's what everybody's talking about now, right? So AI, generative AI specifically, GPT, all this stuff, like is now a platform that everyone is going to be building upon. 3 years ago, people were talking about Web3, and nobody really knew what that mean, and blockchain and crypto. But this is really the new iteration. Is like AI is now going to be a platform onto which all these companies build things on, and we'll see kind of where it goes. I know people are afraid of where this can take us, but now companies don't have a choice. Like even in the companies that were skeptical and or cautious about going AI, they're going. They don't have a choice now.
You kind of have to, right? And this is why we think the opportunity lies, right? So we'll start by kind of breaking down different industries and like how that impact is going to be.
Yeah.
So think of, we'll start with marketing, right? Like if you're trying to create any content, you're trying to, if you are someone who's trying to build any kind of advertising or content of any kind, right?
Yeah.
Before you had to go and you had to basically find copy, figure out ideas and blah, blah, blah.
Mm-hmm.
What do you do now? You just go into ChatGPT, type it in, right?
Yeah.
And this is early on. Right now, we're going to have predictive AI using video. Now we can do it using images, right? Through Midjourney and other things, but also future you can use video, right? So you can actually create content. Think about how content is going to be in the future, right?
For sure.
Yeah.
On the flip side is what makes me nervous about this stuff is we have deep fakes that we can't even tell.
Yeah.
Hatem showing me videos of Tim Cook dancing outside of Apple.
I think that was real.
I don't know. I can't imagine Tim Cook dancing at all.
Maybe I can show this. Maybe we can put this on.
But somebody else the other day said that Jay Powell was at a Dead and Company concert, and there's video of him. So the downside obviously is that we can't tell what's real anymore.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
And that's going to be a thing we'll talk about, in a bit. We'll talk about sort of what the perils are. But, generating content now is incredibly efficient.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to say that it's efficient. It's not replacing.
Yep.
But like the time I need to spend on a task to say, hey, write me an email to my client about this, like it can now just do it for us, and it frees up our time to do things that are more important.
So I think the mundane has become a lot easier to kind of get through.
Yeah.
I know I use it a lot, like, when I'm writing maybe recaps or writing some media notes.
Or if I send you a peer-reviewed science journal article.
Ayal sends me a 160-page fucking article. Like,
it was 40 pages to be fair, but I had to read it. I'm a nerd. I read it.
So that's perfect for that, right? Like, it gives me like a 5-paragraph breakdown of what I need to see. It really kind of allows for us to be more efficient, right?
For sure.
So that's huge. And we see that happening all across the board, right?
Yeah, and I think somebody said, I heard I can't remember who said this now. It said that AI will generate like $7 trillion in efficiencies in GDP, basically, like extra GDP to the economy. I'm trying to remember who said it, but it was like a real person. It wasn't like somebody on Twitter.
Efficiencies and productivity is really the biggest driver of growth, right?
Yeah.
So if you remember Econ 101, that's how we can grow our economy is by being more productive and produce more goods. So I think that's really one of the most important things. And this is why technology is so exciting and innovation is so exciting, because it really creates these moments where we can create some amazing amounts of productivity and happen throughout history. So this is one of those moments, right? Operations. Think of, if you have any kind of business, right? You're looking at all the tasks that you have to do. Maybe if you have to write emails, or maybe you have to, create different processes, streamlining customer service, whatever that is, AI is going to help you do that.
I mean, think about like call centers, right? Like, I mean, we're about to see the downfall of call centers.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's, again, like anything, technology brings about creative destruction. But call centers are going to be replaced by AI at some point. Because most of the 90% of those tasks can be handled by a machine at this point.
100%. With IT and engineering, like, if you are a coder, right? Now you can use these AI tools to help you become a 10x coder. So
you don't even need to be a coder anymore. That's what Jensen Huang was saying also. He goes, basically, you used to have to learn to code, and there's multiple coding languages. There's Python, C++. There's all these different coding languages, and now you can be a coder without being a coder. And I was like, again, I was kind of like, I think my kid should learn how to code, because it's going to be they doesn't really need to at this point.
And this is really how interesting this moment is, because for the first time we have something, because coding is a language English is a language, French is a language, whatever it is. For once we have something that doesn't matter what the language is, it understands it, and it can translate it to something that we understand, right? So you can come up with ideas, whatever it is, a product, a process, thing, and you just allow the system to really build something around it, and that's just really the promise of all of this. Right?
For sure.
And then lastly, like if you think about research and development, biotech, being able, again, chemistry is a code, right? So these models being able to understand molecules and how to kind of really build those, or at least how to test things, is really what the next promise of AI.
Personalized medicine. AI is going to be huge in things like cancer screening, because basically, cancer unfortunately follows a predictive pattern that we just can't mess with at this point. We're not that good at sort of dealing with it yet, but we will be. AI is definitely being used a lot in cancer screening, in treatment plans, personalized treatment plans. And I think that's the next iteration of medicine, is obviously like individual immunotherapies, personalized medicine, making sure that, and AI is going to be used for all of this stuff.
Right. So that's the promise. That is ChatGPT. I've been a big fan of Bard, which is
I use it more now.
Which is the Google's kind of response, ChatGPT.
They're different.
They're different, but not really.
They are different. To me, it's almost like, it's kind of like how Google, like I think of Bard as almost like a Google Plus, Googling something.
Well, Google, what the difference is with ChatGPT, I think it's important that we talk about that. The data set that they've used kind of ends in 2021.
Yeah.
So it's not as fresh, although there is a lot of data that's been fed into these models. With Google is real time. So actually the Google's Bard crawls the internet real time and get your data that's a lot more
that's why I find it more useful.
But also I think, sorry to cut you off. Sure. I think what's important is also what Google has done is also it kind of tells you where the source is.
Yep.
Which I really like.
Yeah. So first of all, like for those, Google has been working on AI for years. Everybody, there was sort of like earlier this year, there was this fear that Google was going to implode because Google's been working on AI for a decade.
Google's kind of created the category.
Yeah, so DeepMind and AI at Google has been here. They hadn't released it yet, and then they kind of botched their initial release after ChatGPT, and now they came back out strong. But I think for me, and I even did this as a joke, is I ChatGPT'd and I Barded. I don't know if you could say that. Which one is better? And they both gave me kind of a similar answer. Like, oh, they're kind of different. So like ChatGPT I use when I need to create stuff. Yeah. It is much better at generating content.
Got it.
Than Bard is.
Yep.
Whereas Bard is better if you need an answer to something.
Right.
If you need an answer to, I know you've used it for travel stuff.
I mean, try it. Like if you want to go somewhere, especially multiple destination, different airlines.
Yeah.
Have it do that for you.
I did this, and I was researching quantum computing because once again I'm a nerd, and this is the kind of stuff I do. And I was like, I started explain quantum computing, and it gave me 2 paragraphs, and then it talked about something called quantum entanglement and superposition. And I was like, and I'm kind of a science nerd, so I kept going, and I was like, explain quantum entanglement, explain, and it did all of that stuff flawlessly. That's and amazing, it's really good. And then on top of that, if it doesn't give you what you want, there's a button right there that says Google it.
Yeah.
And I tried to use like Bing AI. Honestly, it's kind of garbage.
Yeah.
Like the Bing AI for Microsoft.
Yeah.
So
well, I think we'll talk about the companies because I think that's something that we'll get to.
Yeah.
High level though, every company, no matter what business you're in, if you don't have an AI strategy, you are in trouble.
Yeah. For sure.
And I think this is how I think of the world is these tools will help you get better. But if you don't really use them, someone else is going to be much better at it and is going to bypass you because
100%.
Yeah.
It's like, right, when we first used machines to make cars, right? If you didn't use a machine to make a car, you're no longer a car maker.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Henry Ford, right?
Yeah.
So that's really the one. That's the opportunity from an investment standpoint. Like who's doing it, who's going to do it well. what's the strategy? How are you using it to kind of enhance your human capital? Let's just call it.
Yeah.
So that's really one thing.
Human capital is a fancy buzzword also.
Right. Two is proliferation. It's going to be everywhere, right? Like it is, I know we have to regulate it. I know there is a conversation around it. I'm very skeptical. I know what the government knows.
You have to regulate it. There's no question you have to regulate. We regulate everything. Well, I heard somebody the other day say we regulate cereal, like the way cereal is made. So why wouldn't we regulate AI?
Well, no, I think we have to. I'm just skeptical as to the government being behind the curve.
Oh, you don't think the 80-year-olds who are in power understand generative AI?
I'm so skeptical, man. It's really because it's such a powerful technology, and I think the best analogy I can make is the nuclear bomb. When Oppenheimer and all the guys created the nuclear bomb, they knew how powerful this thing is, and they created the IAEA, which is the body that regulates nuclear technology. Right? We need to have something like this because it's this thing can create a lot of deep fakes. They can control elections. They can it's really, really important that we figure it out.
It is tough, and the IAEA is great, but it won't stop a crazy government from nuking somebody, obviously.
No, but at least it is something.
But I like that the analogy was to the nuclear bomb.
It's kind of like similar, right? Like think about how you could manipulate government, society.
Yeah, we already did it without a lot of AI.
Right, exactly. So think about So now think about these tools in the hands of some nefarious actors, and we know it's already happening. So,
100%. And so we need countermeasures, measures, and countermeasures. Listen, every new technology, I always like to say, every problem has a solution, and every solution has a problem.
Right. And again, you're absolutely right. Every solution has a problem. Yeah, but you have to be willing to deal with it.
But that's the point. Is that this is technology. Yeah, technology is always going to do something better, but as such, it's going to create a new problem. Yeah, and people's new technologies are going to figure out a way to subvert that. That's just the way. And that's actually what forces us, like, right? This is Darwinian, this is Darwinism 101, right? This is what forces human progress forward. Yep. It like something so simple as ChatGPT coming out forced Google's hand at this point, right? Because otherwise we're behind. So we got to stay ahead. So we got to push it out further.
That's exactly it. And that's also the problem is they pushed out these technologies without really understanding the impact it's going to have on society. Think of how social media happened, and then we didn't understand that 13-year-old girls will probably get bullied and will have depression as a result of that. Listen,
there's a dark side to every technology.
Correct. So I think this is where we are, and we don't want to be downers, but I think it's really important that we take this stuff seriously. And hopefully we have some smart politician, and this is why it's important that we vote.
Is that an oxymoron?
Right. But no, it's important that we vote and really think of our leaders as being people that can handle these tough questions,
Yeah.
So
I would like to be proven wrong.
I know, me too. So those are the negatives, and we need to deal with that. But let's talk about the winners. Let's talk about what's going on, what happened. GK had a massive week last week. One of our biggest holding as a firm is Nvidia. Company at this point you probably heard the name of. Yeah. What Nvidia does, and this is not a new investment for us. It's been an investment since I think Ayal and I actually
researched March 2016. This is kind of what I said. Yeah. There's only a few stocks that I can remember the exact moment in time where we bought them. Yeah. And do you remember what that moment was?
Yeah, it was
post keynote at CES. So Jensen Huang, the CEO of Nvidia, made a keynote speech in 2016 at the Consumer Electronics Show in Vegas.
Right.
And this is a guy doing a 2.5-hour speech about chips. Yep. So it sounds really exciting.
So what Nvidia does is basically they design chips who are basically silicon wafers to help process all this data. Okay. So AI is really about data processing, right? And Nvidia is the picks and shovels of all this processing, right? So they basically have been making, I think they went public in 1999, so they've been around for a long time.
Yeah, they were a video game chip maker for the most part. Correct. For the longest time, for probably 15 years. That's really all they did, 20 years.
And what they've done is, without getting too technical, they created these GPUs, graphic processing units, which are basically, they're able to process graphics versus CPUs, which are the traditional Intel-like chips, what are just like 0 1s. With GPUs, you can kind of create a lot of data and do different processing models. And Nvidia happens to be the best chips, or the best way for us to process these large language models. So everyone needs to have these.
Yeah, so that's the point. In 2016, Jensen Huang was already talking about this.
Yeah.
Right. And now we're seeing it in 23.
Yeah.
But he talked about this. He talked about machine learning. I remember he was talking about the way chips are going to be able to program other chips.
Yep.
And I started thinking to myself, man, this is the Terminator moment right now. This is that Skynet moment.
AI to make AI chips. Absolutely. Yeah.
Right. So if John Connor was around, maybe this is the time he goes back.
I didn't want to talk about Skynet today.
No, but it was incredible. And not just that. They do data centers. They do self-driving autonomous vehicles. Like they're basically in every. They're the chips that mine cryptocurrencies. Yeah. They're in every business that the future relies on. Basically,
I think this is something that's been said quite a bit in the investment community, which is chips are the new oil. It's really the way for you to, if you want to do any kind of computer modeling, you have to have chips, and you have to bet one. Nvidia is being the number one company.
Yeah.
It's really tough to buy it today. It's very expensive. It had a huge run up. Yeah. But when you think long term, and as an investor, you don't think about the past, you think about the future. What this company is building and where they're going is really mind blowing. So
yeah. So we just, again, it like you said, it's really expensive. It's one of our favorite companies. We've talked about it several times on this show.
Right.
But it's great, and it's little buddy. It's I like to call it the little brother, AMD.
Yeah.
For you mentioned Intel. I remember AMD being like when you were buying a computer in the 2000s, like in the early to mid 2000s, or even the 90s. You wanted an Intel chip, right? Yeah. That was it. That was Intel. And if you bought a computer and it had an AMD chip.
Pentium 64?
Yeah. I had Pentium. And then there was AMD Durons. For the younger viewers, you're not going to know that. But like AMD was thought of as, subordinate. It was sort of the crappier version of Intel. And now how the tables have turned. Obviously, Nvidia dominates the chip space now, but AMD has now basically surpassed Intel.
So if you think of GPUs, 90% of the market is Nvidia, 10% is AMD.
Yeah.
That's kind of the number.
Yeah.
Stuck up. Yeah. AMD is little brother. Hopefully you can figure it out. But listen, I think capitalism works in a beautiful way where Nvidia is making all the money. Nvidia has 75% margins, which is insane. They print in money. But what happens with capitalism is if you make too much money, other players come in and say, I'm going to take some of your margins. So over time, you'll see a lot more competition coming into. Nvidia has huge. They have a 5-year leap ahead of everyone else. So it's going to be some time for people to catch up, but they will catch up.
100%. Yeah. I mean, like, once again, 20 years ago, Intel was the beast. And again, who knows where 10 years from now chips are going to look like, you know what I mean? So, for now, Nvidia is the big dog, but there's always, it's lonely at the top, as they say.
And then TSM, Taiwan
Semiconductors, right? They're the ones that physically create the chips that Nvidia makes, right?
Yep.
The only unfortunate thing Taiwan Semiconductor has going for them is the fact that they have Taiwan in their name.
Yeah, and this is why the biggest conflict, right? Like this is why everyone is worried about Taiwan, China, right? Because 90% of the chips in the world are made in Taiwan.
Yeah,
they develop this expertise and the know-how, and they're just very good at it. And they have all these basically what we call fabs, which is our manufacturing hubs for these chips. And now you can't make them unless you're there. And we're trying, this CHIPS Act in America. We're trying to bring some of that manufacturing here in the U.S.
By the way, Intel. Speaking of Intel, it went up 5% last week because the CEO of Nvidia said that they were doing a pretty decent job at making a chip foundry. So that was like kind of hilarious to see that.
Super hilarious. Yeah. It's super hilarious. But you know, this is strategically, this is something that we need to bring to the US, and I think we're doing that. It's going to take some years, but
and you know, again, Taiwan Semiconductor trades at a very low valuation compared to what they do. Like if they didn't have Taiwan in their name, if they were not a Taiwanese company, they would be trading at twice what they are most likely, just because of that. But as such, they have this risk overhanging them. And then there's also Broadcom. Broadcom is another reasonably valued company, but again, Nvidia is like it. This is like the smartphone in 2008. Right, where Apple, there was basically just iPhones. That was it. There was like the Palm and those weird HTCs where click on them.
I saw a video this morning of Ballmer mocking the iPhone.
Really?
Steve Ballmer mocking the iPhone.
Was it a real video? Or are you sure?
I think it's a real video. No.
Listen, remember when Microsoft came out with the Zune to combat the iPod, and everyone's like, "Oh, Microsoft made it. It's going to crush the iPod." We incidentally have an iPods in the background.
Thank you, Alex, for bringing that. I got a mini and
a relic of the past over here. I think it's been over 20. I think it's been 20 years now. But that's
so enough gigging out about chips.
Love chips, man. Come on. Chips. Well, we're talking about AI. How can we not talk about this? Is like you said, this is the thing that powers it all.
Yeah. So now let's talk about the other
like the software companies, right? Software/hardware companies, right? Is your usual suspects, right? Is your Apple, Microsoft, Google. Microsoft and Google are the two big players right now, right? Because Microsoft owns GPT, OpenAI. And Google has Bard. And they're kind of the two that are leading the space as far as like pushing AI. All the companies are using AI kind of in the background right now, but these are the two, right, that are now in our face.
Yeah, think of these LLM languages are going to become almost commodities.
Large language models.
Yeah, they're going to be basically commodities that run by either Microsoft or Google or maybe Apple or all the big, what we call the hyperscaler, the big tech companies will have these models, and then we can come in and build things on top of them, right?
Yeah.
So they're gonna, like, I use OpenAI's ChatGPT for whatever I do, but it's Microsoft that running the stuff, basically.
Yeah.
The same with Google. So all those companies will only get bigger and more powerful as a result, and that's the unfortunate part of this, right?
Yeah, I mean, depending. Fortunate or unfortunate, depending on where you're invested. Fortunately for us, we have investments in these companies. Even like Amazon, Tesla. Tesla uses a lot of AI.
Tesla is interesting, right? Like Tesla, it doesn't come up a lot as an AI play, but as someone who has a Tesla and drives a Tesla, they have over 1 million hours of
drive data.
Yeah. Because all these cars are basically getting all this data, and AI is really a data game, right? So, so I think, and I know there's a lot of negativity around Elon and his timelines and him pissing people off for obvious reasons. But I think ultimately Tesla can actually be a big player in the space.
And let's not forget that Elon actually started OpenAI.
He did. He really did.
He open sourced it. He open sourced it also, to be fair. But he got pushed out. Shocking that people don't want to work with him. I can't believe it. But you have that. I think Adobe is interesting also because Adobe we know them for Photoshop and all these Dreamweaver
content creation.
Do people still use Dreamweaver?
I don't know. I think Photoshop is.
But they're for content creation. I think this kind of stuff. So there was a brief period of my time where I did creative stuff on Photoshop, and I just remember. I wasn't an expert by any means, but I just remember sitting for hours trying to get this stuff right. And if you can incorporate AI into this and to basically just do predictive, this is what I'm trying to do. Once again, this cuts your time at least in half.
Yeah. And listen, hopefully this gives us a lot more time to do other things, cool things.
That's the point.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's ultimately the point of all this stuff. And I think, ultimately, we'll talk about creative destruction a little bit more.
Yeah. I know he puts the C3 AI in the notes.
The company went crazy last couple of weeks.
I don't even know what they do.
They basically they're like, remember when like blockchain came up and everybody was like, oh,
I'm gonna put blockchain on mine.
So to be fair to C3, they are like, they have been, and I actually see their commercials on CNBC all the time.
Yeah.
They're basically a platform that does like products and services, AI. So like you have a company, let's say you have a company, let's say GK. Not saying we would do this, but you know, we're trying to incorporate AI tools, much like, kind of AWS used to help businesses when we were first moving to the cloud.
Up,
right? So this is kind of, I kind of think of C3 as like the, I'm giving them a little too much credit here by saying they're the AWS of that kind of stuff.
It's a big statement,
but no, that's not what I'm saying. But it's kind of an analogy to them, is like they offer a suite of products that are AI generative and predictive driven.
So you're the CEO freaking out about your AI strategy. Talk to them, basically.
I guess. I mean, this is not a plug for C3. Just so we're clear.
GK doesn't even own it.
We don't own the stock. Just they're one of the companies that have been in the news recently because of that.
Yeah. But also be careful as an investor, right? Like, and this is, there's always a hype cycle, right? There's always, that was Web3 last year or 2 years ago. Blockchain. Like now you see every deck that I'm looking at, they put AI at the end of their name, So
I think there's like 4 cycles since we've been doing this job. Like we had, smartphones first, and then it was social, like anything that had social. Then it was cloud, and then cyber, and then blockchain. And
it's important to have some skepticism as an investor. Understand really what things are looking. Be excited that we were both, I think, very positive and positively expectant. But also you have to be skeptical, because sometimes some of the shit is just a bunch of really smoke.
And if a company changes their name to AI something, you'll know that that's generally a red light. But again, we're just at the beginning of this cycle, so we don't even know where we're going to be in 5 years.
We know who are the winners now,
right?
And
exactly.
And I think that's important. If you want to take advantage of that, that's how you want to go about it.
Yeah, for sure.
So let's talk about displacement. Like, I think we talked about, whenever new technology comes, people are like, oh, is my job going to be gone? Like, if you're a lawyer and ChatGPT can write your briefs now, like, how many less lawyers do you need? Or if you're Accenture and you have 30,000 people doing content creation, do you need all those people?
Well, maybe we could stop lawyers from charging $1,000 an hour for nothing. But I think it's important that humans are adaptive, right?
Right.
Technology, we've always used technology to better our lives in some way.
Yeah.
But some people inevitably get left behind, right? That's just the way it is. So you have to adapt. Again, just like human evolution, it's the same thing, right? You have to adapt or you will fall by the wayside.
Yeah. And that's exactly it. Like, I think the best analogy for me is agriculture, right? Before, you needed to, if you had 1,000 acres and you needed to, I don't know, you need to plant it and so forth, you needed 1,000 people, let's call it. But with the advent of these machines and stuff, you need 3 people to do the same kind of work, but you have the same kind of output, right? And that's a good thing. I mean, I don't think anybody thinks working on the field is a great lifestyle.
The only people who don't like these things are the people who have that job and refuse to adapt, because their job is gone.
Right.
One of my favorite stories is about when the car came along, that one of a big jobs was literally a guy who would clean up horse crap from the street.
In London, right?
Yeah. Right? And they're like...
That was a union, I think.
Yeah, this was like a huge job. This was like a legit work that people had. And
the horse shit cleaners union.
Yeah, imagine proudly wear that.
The HSCU.
We'll have to check on the acronym. But like, this is the thing, like they didn't realize their job would be gone in a decade.
Yeah.
Right? Out of nowhere.
Yeah. So I'm sure everyone is happy that there's no more horse shit on the streets of London.
That was a legit concern in London in the late 1800s.
So I think you make such a great point, right? Like, we have to adapt as humans. Education is part of it. Understanding trends is another part. Upskilling people, like we gotta always be learning, be trying to understand.
For sure.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the people who get hurt the most are the poorer, lower socioeconomic status, right? Because technology is generally like, you need money. to have a computer. We don't think about this stuff a lot of times because computers are so ubiquitous. But if you go to a poor neighborhood, you go to an outside country where they don't have there are still people who don't have access to computers at all.
Right.
So unfortunately, it does create this generational gap, this great divide between the haves and the have-nots, and technology just has, and the sort of the speed at which technology works leaves other people behind. But hopefully, what I do hope with generative AI, with AI in general, is if you make it something so simple like ChatGPT, that we can actually help educate the undereducated in a much more efficient manner, or help them at least kind of level up in the same way to compete with the people who have more than they do.
And I think with every advent in history, we've always worried about the jobs that have been lost, but what happened is more jobs were created because productivity happened, and we were able to do a lot more with a lot less resources.
Yeah, right? and this is I've been hearing about how technology is going to replace people's jobs for my entire life. Meanwhile, we just had the lowest unemployment rate since 1969.
Right.
So explain that to me. 1969, when we sent the guy to the moon, that was the last time. The iPhones that are currently sitting on our tables are 1 million times stronger than those computers.
Right. So I think that's really how you want to look at these things. Is there is a much better outlook than it seems today. Yeah. And if you are feeling challenged, you need to understand how these things will impact your personal situation.
Yeah,
right?
For sure.
But ultimately, the opportunity set is a lot bigger than what we're going to feel from a short-term perspective.
And it'll become part of us.
Yeah.
That's the idea.
Yeah. For us, I think also when we look at this, it's really exciting because a lot of companies, a lot of new ideas are going to be created on this, right? Yeah. I don't know what the next Netflix is going to be, but it's going to be something over the next 5 years. Some really cool or smart entrepreneurs already working on something really awesome that's going to improve our lives in a way that I didn't know.
Yeah, and I think that's important, right? Because new technologies are only available because another technology came to the forefront, right?
Yeah.
So Netflix would not have been able to be possible if broadband internet didn't come first.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Like before that, there was no ability to know. I remember thinking of this idea. I was in a Vegas hotel room in 1996 going, wouldn't it be amazing if I could just think of whatever movie I wanted and just order it? They had the 4 pay-per-view movies that you could order for $20.
Yeah.
But it's not available until the technology comes to be, right?
Yeah.
Uber doesn't exist without GPS, without iPhones, right?
Yeah. And listen, GPS was created in the 60s by DARPA. Yeah. And I think about that. The iterations of all these things, right?
Yeah. I can't remember what the acronym for DARPA says, but it's the Defense Department's basically
it's research arm.
Yeah.
They created actually the internet, or they are it's a government entity that
correct.
Yeah. So I think there is a lot more to be excited about than not, right?
Yeah, and I think it's important that people think, especially people like Elon Musk are pounding the table about how AI is going to be the end of us. Right. AI is still pretty dumb. Okay, let's call it like it is. Okay, large language models, like we were talking about, generative AI. Content, that's what AI does best. It's pattern predicting recognition. So to think that AI is going to become sentient and sort of turn against us as a society, let's just pump the brakes on that.
I don't know, man. Skynet was a
great movie. I love Terminator 2, Terminator and Terminator 2. The rest of them were terrible.
Yeah.
But the fact that the human brain has 100 trillion connections in it. Okay, neural connections, and it's adaptive, and it processes things 1 million times over. A computer, we're not anywhere close to that.
Yeah.
Okay, so right now AI is good at one thing essentially.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean that if you let this thing be rampant, it doesn't mean that it can't. There is let's just call it this way. There is more than a 0% chance.
Sure.
That this thing can take control.
There's more than a 0% chance that we're living in a simulation, right? But you know what I mean?
Or an asteroid hits it.
Right? Yeah. So is it possible? Yes. Yeah. But I am an optimist by nature, and I think to live life well, Hatem, you're definitely an optimist.
Yeah.
there's always going to be problems with what we create.
Right.
But human beings are adaptive, and technology has been part of our lives since the dawn of our civilization, right?
Yeah.
It's not going to just like, we've used these things to help us. We discovered fire to cook. We discovered tools to hunt with.
Sure.
Right?
The wheel,
modern medicine.
All of that.
And now we're an AI moment, and maybe the next one is robotics and quantum computing. But ultimately, my feeling, and this is my own belief, is that we're not going to be supplanted by technology. But I do actually believe that the humans of the future will have tech embedded in us.
Yeah,
we will kind of be like, this is the next iteration of evolution, and this is 100 years from now, maybe. But we already do it, right?
Yeah.
We already we just have it outside of our bodies.
My iPhone is
correct.
It's
now, and you know, maybe we could talk about this next time, right? Apple just released their headset.
Oh yeah,
right? The Vision Pro, as they call it.
Vision Pro.
And this is the next generation of computing now. Yeah. And now we're being able to...
We should do a whole show about that. Because
absolutely.
I was so excited yesterday.
We were all very excited. It's the first time we've been excited about an Apple event in a decade, I think.
Yep.
But
I will show the video of Tim Cook.
But basically, ultimately, we will be incorporating this stuff into our lives, and we will use it if there is an issue with tech. Yeah. Like, you know, we'll use it to our advantage also. So don't worry. AI is not taking over. We're not killing anybody. Yeah. Everything's fine.
And to close this up, GK is using AI in improving every process.
That's true.
Yeah, I mean, and frankly, it's been an awesome, fun excursion. We have a ton of really smart young people in the office who are thinking of it, how to use it in different ways. All the old dogs, if you want to call them, in the firm are also adopting it. So it's really been fun.
Wait, am I the young one or the old one?
we're the old dogs. We're the old dogs, man.
To be fair, but we were there first.
Yeah, exactly.
Know?
So we're, you know, I think being open to adapting and being open to employ these things, try them, figure out, you know, they may work for some things, and may work. At the end of the day, we are humans, and that human touch, human element is going to be the most important thing. You know, emotions, being able to be empathetic and understanding people, you know, that's never going to be changed. That is going to be the essence of any relationship that's important. But these tools are going to help us do the other shit that we don't like to do in a much better way.
I always say this. It's actually in my bio on the website. Never use technology to replace the human experience, but only to enhance it. Yeah,
that's exactly it. So with that being said, I'm excited. We're having a good year. I hope you are too. Thank you for listening. Thank you for staying the course. We'll see you soon.
See you next time.
Yeah. Cheers.